This is Henry Wilkins for VOA News in the West Bank. In December, a poll of Palestinians said that support for Hamas has risen sharply since October 7th.
I've been watching the news, a foolish habit for a man my age. Every day, I see the same images flickering across the screen, coming from that same small piece of land. The images are sharper now, the colors more vivid, the sounds louder. But the story they tell is ancient. I see young faces filled with anger and fear on both sides. I hear the cries of mothers, the speeches of politicians, the explosions, and I feel a sadness that goes beyond politics. It's the sadness of watching a wheel turn again and again, crushing a new generation with each rotation. Grandfathers pass their anger to their sons, and sons pass their grief to their grandsons. People today talk about history, about who was there first, about who is right. They draw lines on maps and quote resolutions, but they forget what lies at the heart of it all. They forget that before it was a conflict, it was a home. To understand the headlines of today, you cannot start with today. You must go back to the beginning, before the walls were so high and the wounds so deep. It began for me in London, spring 1948. I was very young. Barely 20 years old. I wasn't a photographer. I was a junior runner for the BBC's Foreign News Desk. My job was simple: run scripts to the presenters, fetch coffee, and listen. Mostly, I listened. The world was still trying to heal from the Great War. And then a new story began to dominate the wires. It came from a place called Palestine, a place that for most of us in London was just a name from the Bible. I remember the day the mandate ended, May 14th. The senior editor, a cynical man named Mr. Davies, gathered us around the teleprinter.
Well, lads, it's official. The British are out. The state of Israel has been declared.
A young reporter in the room cheered. He was Jewish. His family had fled Germany. For him, this was a miracle, a home. But then another message came through from Cairo. The Arab League had rejected the declaration. Armies were mobilizing. Second journalist.
It's a catastrophe, an invasion. They are stealing land that is not theirs.
And there it was. In that small, smoky room in London, the entire conflict was laid bare. Two truths, two stories that could not exist in the same space. One man's dream of a homeland was another man's nightmare of losing his. That was the moment I decided I didn't want to just report the news. I wanted to understand the people living it. I saved my money. I bought my first camera, and I knew where I had to go. I had to go to that land, not to find out who was right or who was wrong, but to understand how two truths could grow from the same soil. It took me almost a year to get there. I arrived in the port of Jaffa in the spring of 1949. The War of 48 was over, but the fighting had been replaced by a silence that was just as loud. The city was a ghost of itself. Many of its streets were empty. Houses stood vacant, their doors slightly ajar, as if their owners had just stepped out for a moment and never returned. The air was thick with dust, the dust of a history that had been violently interrupted. I found a guest house run by an elderly Jewish man, a refugee from Poland named Samuel.
A photographer? What do you want to photograph here? Ruins or new beginnings?
I want to photograph the truth.
The truth? Boy, in this land, everyone has their own truth. And they carry it like a weapon. Be careful which one you point your camera at.
He was right. The next day I walked towards the newer parts of the city, towards Tel Aviv. The energy was completely different. It was a city being born. Here I saw the other side of the story. People who had survived the unimaginable horrors of the Holocaust. For them, this wasn't a conquest. It was a resurrection. I spent my days walking the line between these two worlds, the silent, grieving streets of Jaffa and the loud, hopeful streets of Tel Aviv. And that's when I found the two objects that would define this conflict for me. I found them on the same day, in the morning, in an empty Arab house in Jaffa. I found an old, ornate iron key left on a dusty table. In the afternoon, in a small apartment in Tel Aviv, a young woman proudly showed me a crisp, official-looking document, a deed to her new home. I didn't understand it then, but I held the memory of both, the key to a past that was lost, and the deed to a future that was being built. And I began to realize they were for the very same house. My journey into this conflict began when I decided to find the people connected to those two objects. Finding the owner of the deed was easy. Her name was Leah, a violinist from Hungary.
They gave us this place, the agency. They said it was abandoned. I try not to think about who lived here before. In Auschwitz, we dreamed of a window, just a window with sun. When I stand here, I feel I can breathe for the first time in 10 years. Is it wrong to want to breathe?
She showed me the numbers tattooed on her arm. For her, that house wasn't property. It was sanctuary. Finding the owner of the key was much harder. It took me weeks. I followed whispers and rumors to a crowded refugee camp near Ramallah. And there, in a tent made of sacks and canvas, I found him. His name was Khalid, an old man, a former orange grower from Jaffa.
I found a key in a house in Jaffa, an old iron key.
My key. It opens the door to a house with a lemon tree in the courtyard. My grandfather built that house with his own hands. They told us to leave for a few weeks, until the fighting stopped. We took nothing but the clothes on our backs. I only forgot the key. I only forgot the key. I only forgot the key. I only forgot the key.
He didn't speak of politics or armies. He spoke of the smell of the lemon blossoms in the spring. He wasn't mourning a country. He was mourning his home. I had a choice to make as a journalist, as a human being. What was the story? Was it Leah's story of survival or Khalid's story of loss? I photographed them both, but I never told Leah about Khalid, and I never told Khalid about Leah, and I never gave the key back to him. What good would it have done to give him a key to a door he could never again open, to tell her that the floor she stood on was another man's soul? I couldn't do it. I realized that my job wasn't to solve the problem. It was simply to witness the depth of it. I left that land a few months later. They never published the photo of Leah's tattoo or the one of Khalid's empty hands. They were too complicated, too quiet, too true. I kept the key. It became my own private artifact. Not a trophy, but a burden, a constant reminder. This key taught me that neutrality is a lie. To be a true witness is to hold both of their stories in your heart at the same time, and to accept the weight of that contradiction. That single house in Jaffa became my lens for the rest of my life. In every conflict I covered, I looked for the house. I looked for the Leah, and I looked for the Khalid. I never went back. I don't know what happened to Leah or Khalid. I imagine she filled the house with the sound of her violin, and I imagine he told his grandchildren stories of a lemon tree. They are both long gone now, but their story, their two truths, are still there, still fighting over the soul of that one small house. Sometimes the only truth is the space between two irreconcilable sorrows.